Okay, well, before we begin and before we get into any topics of this healing journey, I would like to say welcome back to everyone who is joining us subsequently, but also for anyone who's joining us for the first time, welcome as well. And a big thank you for joining us on the Simply Inspired podcast today. Today is episode 529, I believe, so it's quite surreal to say that, but that is the case. And today I am joined by a very, very special guest, and I'm very honored to be talking with this remarkable and inspiring lady today, Christine Marie Aitchison. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing it the correct way. I spend more time practicing names, Christine Marie, than I do practicing questions, but that's a story for another time. But anyone who is hearing about this lady for the first time, a remarkable healer, a published author, a space holder, psychedelic assisted therapy, energy healing. Christine Marie covers quite a few areas of healing. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to let her explain that very shortly in her own words. I'm not going to try and define those, but I'm just going to say that this is a lady who makes a profound positive difference and has a profound positive impact on the lives of many people. And I'm just going to sum it up like that, as well as the fact that her own healing journey is deeply inspiring, I must say. And from what I've heard of it, and I'm sure there's more that we will get into today. So, as always with these talks, everyone, it's not really about me, and it's only partially about Christine Marie, even though it's her story. Really, this talk is about all of you. And today, hopefully, we will share some things that will help you to heal, help you to explore non-ordinary states of consciousness or alternate states of consciousness, help you to realize that there are different modalities, methodologies, depending what term you want to use, of healing, so that if you're already on an exploratory path, if you're just starting out on one, whichever level, if you like, any of you, the listeners, are on, hopefully there will be something in here that will help you, and that's why we are making the time to do this. I do have the flus or COVID or something, so if I sound a bit different, I apologize, but hopefully I'm close enough to the usual. And Christine Marie, as I've already said before we started, I would like to extend a very big thank you to you for taking time out of your morning to make this talk with myself, with our audience, and the intentions behind this, as I've explained. Thank you very, very much.
Mm. Thank you, Liam. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you to everyone that's listening at this time. It's always such an interesting thing when I get the question, what do you do? Or how do you do it? And I like to try to sum it up into something that's digestible for people, in which I just really feel like my gift is holding safe and sacred spaces for healing and transformation. And I do that through many modalities, but really the crux of it is getting to the root of the problem, the block, the challenge that's keeping someone stuck from being in their fully empowered and true self. And I feel that it can be really confusing when we live in a culture and a society that tells us who we should do, who we should be, what we should do, and how we should be doing it. And so my goal and intention when I work with clients or groups is to really just support them in reprogramming a lot of the beliefs and the traumas and the conditioning that were adopted from whether it was childhood, whether it was the school system, whether it was, anybody in their life that impacted them in a way to where they were consistently forgetting who it is that they truly were before they incarnated on this earth. And it's also my belief that, we all have a purpose. We all have a gift to bring to this world, a light to bring to this world. And sometimes we can be so far away from what that thing is and feel so disconnected from it. And I really am all about putting the empowerment back in the hands of the individual. And so I really love to steward a path and to walk a path with someone who is continuously searching for that light, that purpose, the reason why they are here in the first place, because no one is here by mistake. I think we just have forgotten, and we have a lot of reasons and powers that be that are trying to make us forget our power and our purpose. And so, how can we really claim our own inner sovereignty to come back to the remembrance of who we are?
Well, that is a very, very eloquent and beautiful description to get the ball rolling with our talk today. And I agree completely. The rediscovery aspect of who you really are, that is an absolutely incredible, meaningful, beautiful process to spend your life in. So we will talk more about that. And you mentioned there, Christine, about the forces, if you like, and the other things in the world. And you've been through your own process with, shall we say, traditional medicine
Mhm.
aspects as well. And I would like to talk about the time briefly, or not so much the time, but the process you went through of discovering the limits of that. And for anyone listening to this, I'm not certainly not criticizing every aspect because there's good and bad, but it sounds more like you realize the limits. And I think that's valuable. I think that's meaningful to talk about that process. So may we delve into that topic a little bit of that time in your life and some of what you discovered there, please. Thank you.
Yeah, and what I feel that you're referring to is my time being a nurse in Western medicine.
Yes, yes.
Um, and one thing I really want to share about that piece of history, or those pieces of history, is that, there was a time when I was 9 years old and had a near-death experience where Western medicine saved my life. So I want to just shine a light on some of the good and some of the positive and some of the, I would say actually, like, light that shines through in the Western medicine model, because it's not all bad, it's not all evil, right? There is support and love and compassion there, um, in some ways. And then my near-death experience was what put me on the path of becoming a nurse. And when I got into nursing, really the goal was to just be able to provide emotional, compassionate, loving support to those who are in their darkest hours, just like how I had experienced at such a young age. And I realized about a year and a half to 2 years in Western medicine that what I was hoping to do was very limited. And there was a standard of practice that I had to obey and go by that eventually became pretty soul sucking for me. Because I started to have my spiritual awakening during that time too. So it was like everything that I thought was true became flipped upside on its head. And I was forced to look at all of the distortions and the illusions that I was seeing, not only within myself, but in the world around me and in the places and environments that I was inhabiting the most. And, I did really, really powerful and beautiful work as a nurse, and I know I helped many lives, but I know that the scope of practice was really limited, and the overall healing for the patient that was in my care. And when I'm under, essentially guidance by system that ultimately puts poison inside other people's bodies to support the um to support the person, that to me just felt really wrong. as like the first line of defense. If someone's saying that they're depressed and then I have to give them an antidepressant, it's like, well, no, why don't we just actually get to the root cause of the depression? And you won't need this medication that's going to, one, probably not work, two, build a tolerance, three, have side effects that are going to cause you to have even more problems, and then you'd come back into the hospital again anyway, right? And then you give them another medication to help support their kidneys, and then they, it's just this cycle that was really, really hard to be a part of. And I had to choose to eventually leave. And it was not all for nothing, because being a nurse really gave me the skills and the tools to really be by somebody during a very dark time, to where like I use that in my, everyday life with the work that I do now in the more holistic healing world. So, yeah, I try to be very careful about naming something as good or bad, but just being like, there's a spectrum, there's a shadow and a light to all of it. And here was the light and here was the shadow of the system that I was working in. And the shadow essentially overrode the light that was keeping me there.
Well, it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense, and the shades of grey. I mean, I'm a big believer in that as well. That you can't really think of life in black and white terms, and certainly the healing that you do has changed forms from then to now, and I'm sure it continues to change forms from now onwards. But we'll come to all of that. Now, the other thing, and just so I can contextualize this for you, Christine Marie, as to why I'm asking, everything that I bring up is always for helping other people. There's nothing to sort of pry into your life, just so you know that. But there's also experiences that you had that people relate with, which is a big part of what makes this interesting. And for people who are in that early stage, shall we say, of the awakening aspect, I'm referring to the people who are listening to this, who are kind of not as far along, if that's the right term, as we are, but they're kind of thinking, okay, a lot of these things I was taught to believe about myself, about the world, everything like that isn't what I thought it was. And there's a very uncertain time there in the beginning. And it's a very simple question, but it has far-reaching sort of implications. Is what advice you would give to those people who are in those um, baby steps? I mean, I don't know how else to put it. And they're realizing that things are not as they thought they were, one way or another.
Yeah, a piece of advice or suggestion I would give would be to really make sure that you're leaning in to those parts of you that you might feel um, discomfort with or resistance with, um, and to like really start doing some deep inner work. And when I say that, it doesn't have to mean it has to be so gruesome and so overwhelming, to go into like an internal process of reflection and exploration. But it really does help when you decide, I'm going to stop distracting myself or my feelings or anything that feels like it's been a little bit challenging. When you say, going to stop doing that and I'm going to actually lean in and be curious about what's there, that's what frees you. That's where healing happens. But it's hard to heal something that's not acknowledged, that's still in the shadow or still in the realms of being not integrated into your awareness. And so, yeah, my advice would be to find somebody that you trust or that you can build trust with to help you move through these areas of confusion or disorientation, so that you can start to kind of piece back together a new truth and reality that actually feels wholesome to you. That's one piece of advice I would share. And the other would be to find something to use as a creative practice to help express what's happening inside of you. And you don't have to, at this time in your life, consider yourself an artist, although I believe everyone is an artist. Of course, we are creators. You know, we were born to create, or else we wouldn't even have this world that we live in. But find a piece, a medium of art that you can really use as a way of self-expressing, whether that be writing, painting, drawing, collaging, even like forming puzzles, building blocks, things that you might have loved as a child and got away from as an adult because of responsibilities. I'd encourage you to go back to those places of passion and to allow that inner childlike innocence to be, to have a stage, to have a presence. Because I believe that a lot of us abandon that inner childlike state because we have to grow up at some time, given what our culture says. And I think there's a lot of medicine and magic that can come from reclaiming those lost parts of ourselves.
Well, that is a beautiful description as well. A very eloquent speaker. I'm really enjoying listening to everything that you're sharing here because of the eloquence and the simplicity with which you put it across, Christine Marie. I appreciate that. And hey, I know this is what you do, but still, it makes a lot of sense. Now, the other thing here is we've been touching on these different things of shades of grey and different integrated parts of ourselves, the shadow work. As you may have noticed by now, I'm not really a big fan of labels. I'm more a big fan of people having their own experiences. But just, let's use that term for a moment. And you have those different integrated parts with yourself. I mean, we've met today for the first time. I can see the different things. You're very gentle, but you're very strong. And that leads me to the sort of trauma aspect. And as I said before, nothing to pry into anything with yourself, but there's a lot of other people who are obviously started on a spiritual path, including myself, by the way, through trauma. And I heard it put once that if people don't have any questions, they're not going to find any answers. And in my experience, one of the things that obviously gives us questions is a traumatic experience. And I'm using that term very broadly because I really don't know how um, difficult this is for you to talk about, and I don't want to sort of open
Mhm.
anything like that up. But that is also a key part of your journey, isn't it, Christine Marie? That you are a survivor, and that is a big part of what put you on this path. I'd like to talk about that briefly from your experiences, but more importantly, from also other people who feel that they're alone in this,
Mhm.
having these experiences. So you get where I'm going with this. May we discuss that? Thank you.
Yeah, and something I really appreciate your gentleness, Liam, and something I want to just let you know is that it's okay to pry, it's okay to ask me these questions. I feel like it's an open book. I'm an open book at this point, so no need to think otherwise for you and everyone here. Yeah, I mean, as a child, I suffered and survived through a lot of abuse, physical, sexual, emotional abuse, also neglect. I grew up in poverty and I grew up with a father who was an addict and a mother who was diagnosed with schizophrenia before I was born. And there was a lot of absence of love, condition or unconditional love, how I would say. There's a lot of absence of unconditional love, a lot of absence of support, a lot of absence of food and like the basic needs. And so when I had my spiritual awakening in my early 20s, I was healing from a big heartbreak from a college relationship, and that relationship was an abusive one. It was toxic, and one that I participated in. It wasn't like that I was just abused and I am, the victim, but I participated in receiving the abuse. And so when I was healing from that broken heart, I soon discovered the pattern at which that I was following, which was that of my mother's. But I didn't know. Like I grew up thinking that that type of abuse was normal. So when I found myself in that type of relationship, it was like, oh, okay, this is just like this is just what happens when someone loves you so much. You know, this is how their their act this is what is okay. And when I was healing from that, I then came to an awareness of, oh, that was what I experienced in childhood. That is what I watched my father do to my mother. That is what I experienced from my own dad. And it just broke open this huge vessel of sadness and grief and despair and loneliness and like a how could I have not seen that? How could I have not known? How could I have been so blind? And I don't see it that way anymore. I see that relationship as a beautiful catalyst to my healing and have such deep forgiveness and gratitude for that person and that time and my younger self, you know, that found themselves in that situation. Because it really was what allowed me to break a lot of the illusions and patterns that I was finding myself in that was very unconscious for a long time. And from there, you know, it was just like this moment of understanding that I had a lot to heal, I had a lot to mend, and that I didn't have to do it alone. And so not only was I really held by, you know, the therapists, the healers, the practitioners that were on my support team and still are. But I also, one of the most profound things that I could have done for myself was to remember my spiritual guides and my team that had always been there, but I was not paying attention to. And so my spiritual awakening was about healing the past trauma, but also remembering where I came from, which is of that higher light and the angelic ancestors that I have always had, that were there by my bedside when I was almost dying. And they told me, it's not your time. You need to come back to this world. You have light to give. And so, having them as allies have been tremendously life changing. And it's just really interesting to share that because if somebody hasn't had that encounter with a spiritual guide, whether it's an animal, a plant, you know, an angel, a guardian, whatever you want to categorize it as, they might not understand the value of what that is. But part of my work with others is to open up that connection line again so that they can see how powerful it is. And we all have a spirit team, we all have unseen forces of love and guidance and protection that are always there. But I think what happens is we get so consumed by our everyday problems and our everyday life and our, you know, just this 3D world that we're living in. Sometimes it's just actually mere survival that we can't see and raise our vibration enough to notice all of the unseen realms that are here to guide us in a direction that is more supportive for our highest good. And so I just want to give a shout out to my spirit team and to all of the ancestors and guides that have supported me on this path and that have helped a lot of my clients and students really develop a more stronger sense of themselves and helping them also heal. You know, like these beings are here to help, again, help you remember who it is that you truly are outside of these trauma stories. And so if you can do the work to raise your vibration to meet them at that level, then you can go really far really quickly. And it doesn't have to be so woo woo. It can be actually very simple and easy to open up that connection line. And I just want to like break the stigma about all of that because sometimes people find it to be so out there. And I actually feel like it should be a part of everybody's everyday life.
Yes, it should. Yes, it should. I mean, not to go off topic with anything here, Christine Marie, but I also communicate with everything that you've mentioned there, so I understand very much. In actual fact, I'm doing a type of service kind of thing after our call, which is why I have to go on the hour. So I understand very much. That's interesting because that it also explains more why I was drawn to you in this sort of intuitive way as well. So there we are. That is very interesting. And I think that what people would really like to know is you say about raising the vibration there. And I think a lot of people know or have an openness that there are our helpers or there are these other beings around, but a lot of people don't know what it is. I would say maybe you won't agree with this, but in my life experience, it's more like people think, okay, yeah, I've definitely felt that, but I don't know if I'm imagining it. I don't know if that makes me crazy. More than, okay, no, I don't believe in that. Or if they say that, no, I don't believe, usually that comes from fear. And again, they've had an experience, but they're trying to push it away. Anyway, but my actual question here is that process of raising the vibration. If someone wants to get to know their spirit team more, their helpers, their ancestors, guides, any of these beings, what would be some practices you would recommend specifically in that area? Because you said something really wonderful there of words to the effect of remembering who you are outside of or beyond the traumatic narrative. And I just think that is so powerful. So, can we discuss that aspect, please, of opening up to all of this more for people?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like the first thing I want to mention is that this process isn't so analytical, which I think is what is most of our norm around trying to understand something is like with the mind. Like, how do I know what's right and what's this and what's that and how can I open up myself with using the mind? And the mind is a strong and powerful tool. I'm not saying that it's not. But if we're trying so hard to figure something out with our analytical mind, you're essentially doing the opposite of what opening up yourself to the great mystery is asking of you, which is to really surrender, to trust, to be curious, and to feel with the body, with the heart, with the belly, with the gut, with all of your other senses that might not be connected to the thinking brain. And so I would get really, first of all, I would ask somebody, what's the resistance that you're already holding about meeting these guides or these unseen realms? What are the stories that you've created or cultivated or that have been thrown upon you from outside of you that, make you feel like maybe this is not something that is safe or important? So I'd have them get really clear about what those blocks are, and then, like I said, we do the inner work to clear those blocks and to rewrite a whole new story and a whole new script about what is actually true for them so that they have a baseline, a foundation. And a lot of it's like deprogramming so many of our belief systems. Um, Especially even those that have grown up with dogmatic religion and have been told it should be this way, this is what's true, this is what's not true, and if you don't believe this, then you're going to hell or X, Y, and Z will happen. And the fact of the matter is that is also based on fear. And if you're living in a state of fear, that is a frequency that's very low. And so if you want to raise your frequency, you want to learn how to accumulate trust, gratitude, love, openness, all these other forms of beings and sensations and vibrations that will then allow you to meet your guides that are essentially, that's what they are. They are like living, walking essences of those higher vibrations. And they're not going to lower their vibration to meet you. You have to raise your vibration to meet them. And that's where doing the deep clearing, releasing work comes into practice. And so I would start there. And it's not romantic. It's not easy. People want to be like, oh, I just want to like just automatically go into a state like that. And there are ways in which we can absolutely guide you that through that, like through journeying and psychedelic healing and stuff. You know, there are ways that you can absolutely enter into those realms. And I feel like those are beautiful moments where you can have a big breakthrough. But it's really in the everyday practice and the everyday embodiment of those teachings that those connection lines will stay and last and be a part of your everyday life. Um, and so I just believe, yeah, if you can make it a part of your daily practice and daily intention, then you will see results, probably quicker than you think.
Absolutely. I agree very much. It's a beautiful description, though, and very much what you were saying there, Christine Marie, about the mind and about the analytical aspect and coming out of that into the experience. That's what I meant when I said I don't like labels, you see, in the sense that you can't really put um you can't really use the word to explain an experience really. You can only use the word to say, okay, this is like an experience I had, but it's going to be a little bit different for that individual. So it's considering the limits of words, we're actually doing a very good job here, I would say, of experiences. Um, but when we're talking about misunderstood practices, I'm going to put it that way, healing modalities and so forth. Obviously, with the subconscious and some of these things, people are getting to grips more now, I would say, with, the subconscious programs and some of these things. But when you're doing the sort of brain chemistry aspect or the psychedelic aspect, whatever you want to call it, I feel that's misunderstood. Now, once again, I have to say that I've personally, maybe a little bit differently, but I've personally worked on this with altering my, serotonin and different levels, and it's had a really wonderful effect with the trauma aspect. So I do have some understanding, but I don't think a lot of people do. I mean, I think there's still stigma with that as well. Can we go into a little bit as to how that aspect of what you do incorporates in the healing, how it actually works? Let's sort of demystify or destigmatize a couple of things around that sort of chemical aspect of healing. And I use that term very broadly,
Yeah.
but this is an important topic as well.
Yeah. I mean, I'll speak on the psychedelics and the plant spirits and the earth medicines that I've used, that have completely changed and altered my life in a way that I cannot even believe I'm so privileged to have access to. And I also want to say that I know some of us that are listening out there might not have accessibility out there. So it's really great to just name that that's a thing and that there are ways in which that, if you are searching and seeking for this type of experience, that we can talk through a solution for you. So I want to just say that. But yeah, I mean, one medicine that I work with and that I serve is psilocybin, which is, most people know it as magic mushrooms. Um, and right now in Oregon, it is legalized for therapeutic use, or it doesn't even have to be for therapy. You could come and say, oh, I want to just have this medicine be, like your intention could be about creativity, right? It could be about wanting to explore your spiritual team. It could be about anything that you long for. It doesn't have to be trauma related. But what this medicine particularly does is that overrides the default mode network in the brain, which that part of the brain is kind of what keeps our protectors on and our subconscious separated from our conscious. And so sometimes we walk around and we are like, oh, I've healed that. Oh, I don't have that problem. Oh, like, I've already brought that out into my awareness and I've totally, solved that and blah, blah, blah. And when you go into a state of being with the medicine, you might get shown something different. You might get surprised by what is still lingering in the shadows or in the subconscious that you really haven't fully integrated or healed. And what I love about psilocybin particularly is that it is such a beautiful ally for those who are seeking to really come home into a sense of belonging, because we know that mushrooms are the connector lines to the trees and to the plants, right? They build that mycelial network. And so if you struggle with feeling lonely or feeling like you don't belong in this world or feeling like you don't have a purpose or feeling like over consumed by trauma or anything like that, that this medicine can turn on the light switch and say, "Oh no, that's not true. That's not who you are. That's just a story." And in these states of, you could say, alteration, profound healing can happen, especially if you're being held by a safe and trusted facilitator. Um, the medicine will give you exactly what you need. Sometimes it's not what you want. Sometimes people come in with an intention to like know what their career life path is, and what they get is this old trauma that they totally forgot about. But it's somehow still connected to, this new life path that they're wanting to walk. They might just not understand it in that moment. And being in the medicine is completely trusting and surrendering to the mystery. And, as much as you want to control what happens, you absolutely can't. And that's where it can be really helpful for people that have control issues. Because it teaches them that actually they can be safe even in challenge, even in temporary discomfort. And that speaks a lot of volumes for being in the real world, right? Because we are just surrounded by a lot of chaos, a lot of distraction, a lot of turbulence. And like if we can go through a long journey of discomfort and challenge inside the medicine world, then we have a template for how we can do that in our everyday life. And again, I like to say that the journey is a huge part of the process, but the best and bigger part of the process for working with psilocybin is the integration. Because how can you take what the medicine gave you, the teachings, the lessons, the healings, the wisdom, and how can now we apply that into your everyday life so that you have just what it feels like a lot of people are looking for is peace, love, connection, less stress, right? They want to feel good and aligned and well and healthy. And that part of the process with integration is important, because if we skip that, then we might miss a lot of what we didn't realize happened in that one journey, which people can process for years, just one experience. And the research says that it's 10 years of therapy in one journey. So imagine how much time and money and energy you save, if you were to do such a courageous thing. And I know for me, I absolutely would not be here, um, doing the work that I do, being in the life that I'm living, being in the relationship that I have, the friends I have, all of it, if it weren't for the medicines of the earth, the ancient medicine that was used way before pharmaceuticals were. Um, and I think a lot of the stigma comes from the war on drugs era, that happened where we were told that psychedelics were harmful, that they were drugs, they were um, going to change us for the worse. And that was given because the powers that be at that time knew how capable they were. If everyone in the world took them, then the amount of change that would happen that would ultimately affect them in a negative way, but more so the collective in a better way. So yeah, I'll pause there. I know that's a lot. I could just talk on and on about this subject, but I'll pause for a moment.
No, it's a very, very powerful description, very meaningful again. And, I agree completely from my own experiences and from the experiences of friends, and close people. And it's a message that needs to be shared. And it's really, really is an honor to play a small part in raising that awareness. And I agree. I mean, the destigmatization aspect of what we're doing today is really wonderful. With the spirit guides side of things, with the psychedelic side of things. I just think it's great. Even though this will only be sort of the tip of the iceberg today with what we talk about, I'm always very aware of that. There's plenty of benefit for people already in this topic. But I meant to ask you as well, Christine Marie, and it's I've been thinking of when to sort of bring this up. But obviously you're a guide and you're in a very um, I'm going to say a very privileged position actually to be with people through these moments, the painful ones and the beautiful realizations, all of these different shades. And again, very simple question, but who knows where this will lead. But in terms of the fact that you are having this positive impact and people have to make the decision, people have to be courageous, people have to do all of these things that you said, but you're with them in like the most intimate moments that most people ever experience with another person, I would say. And I'm just curious how that sort of feels or how you process that because, as I said earlier, I mean, it's an amazing, beautiful thing to be able to do that. And the fact that, your sort of mission in this incarnation, it seems to be all of this healing and everything that you're doing. But nonetheless, I mean, how do you process what other people are processing and share these moments with people, if that makes sense, what I'm sort of asking here?
Yeah, I think this is a really important question, especially for other practitioners or those that are wanting to step more into the healing arts world. I think it's really important. One thing that I can say that is huge is energetic hygiene. So when I was a nurse, I didn't realize how much of other people's energies I was taking home with me that was starting to deplete my own life force. And I found a psychic healer that really drove that home for me is like you cannot be absorbing all of this because you are a sponge and you will. That's like the shadow of the empath or of the sensitive child, that comes into this world that can hold everybody else's pain for them. But that's not our job or our responsibility. In fact, we don't want to do that because if we're holding another person's pain inside of ourselves, then we're doing them a disservice because they're not the ones actually doing their own work. We're doing it for them. And I just don't think that is sustainable. So, energetic hygiene, I started to practice that while I was a nurse. And there are just a couple of exercises, that you can do in order to make sure that you are really just releasing what's not yours when you're working with others, but especially in the psychedelic realm or especially in the altered states realm. Even like I consider Reiki to be an altered states medicine. I consider shamanism, of course, to be that. And I consider like any type of healing work that you are opening up portals. And so you have to be very careful about what you're opening and what is sticking to you and not sticking to you. And so for me, as a sensitive empath, compassionate being, I've learned to really hold space with tender and love and just presence for somebody through their delicate time. But I'm also really aware of my own body and my own state of groundedness being in my body, that I'm not taking home their stuff with me at the end of the day. Like essentially like the container opens and then it closes, right? And that's really important to have a practice of and have awareness of. And I do think also the more that the healer or the practitioner, however you want to label them, is doing their own inner work, the less that they'll take home because the more embodied they are in their own truth. So essentially, like the less fragments or the less openings of their own energetic field or in their own body they'll have because they've processed and cleansed and cleared. So that, like, if they come into position with another person that maybe has a similar trauma history or pain, you know, that essentially like it kind of just washes over them like water because they don't have that inside of them anymore. Now that's I think that's a lifelong practice, of course. Like we're not asking for perfection here, but I just think it's really important to be aware of your own stuff and then to make sure that you know what your own stuff is. And then if that comes up against or comes up into contact with another person that you're in a practitioner client relationship with, that you can really just stay in the body. And that is, I think, the most important thing in this work. And it takes a lot of practice. I can't say I've mastered it, but I definitely can say I've come a really long way to being able to do that. And yeah, and to just use the elements to support you in cleansing and clearing. So after, maybe a really heavy client session, whether that's with medicine or without medicine, if it feels like it's a little dense, I'll use sage, I'll use fire, I'll go outside and ground with the grass, I'll go for a walk, I'll take a bath. I'll use the elements to help wash away, what's no longer needed. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's what intuitively came to me.
Very much so, very, very much so. I mean, it's really much needed awareness in regards to that topic for a lot of highly sensitive people, empathic people, intuitive, whatever term you'd like to use. And the same as you, it took me years to learn this process. And same as you're saying there, Christine Marie, the work in progress element. I'm still a work in progress, but I've also been working on the same thing because as a younger person, I would just I would some of the stuff I carried away from people, family members, relationships, in the professional capacity, anything. And it took a long time to master that. So there's a lot of people out there who are experiencing that. But again, they don't necessarily know what's going on. So I'm really glad that we've mentioned that because the topics that I'm drawn to go into are often very intuitive as well. I mean, there's one or two things that I think, okay, we need to talk about that to sort of set the scene correctly and everything. But most of it is just what I feel the pull to talk about. So, okay, last couple of things, and we'll wrap this up fairly soon for for your time, mine, everyone listening, so they can take it on board because I think it's very important when I do these talks as well that people have practically applicable information to use. And a lot of what you shared today, by the way, is it's not just, oh, that's a great story. It's very much, okay, if I put myself in the shoes of somebody listening to this, I think, okay, I can take that away and I can actually apply that. And that's a beautiful thing because that's why I do these. So two other questions for you. Okay, very, very simple. I mean, the whole work in progress thing, you're still learning, you're still growing, you're still discovering new things and so forth. So if we talk about the sort of future plans or where you would like to go, with your role within the healing arts on a sort of ongoing basis. I think that's very important to talk about as well, for the reason that a lot of people, I would say a type of spiritual narcissism, I'm drawn to say, is actually very prevalent, where people think, okay, I found the answer, it works for me, that's the answer. And what I love about you is the diversity, but also the continual discovery. I mean, that's the simple truth of the matter. So, in terms of where you would like to go, not in the analytical sense, but where you feel guided, where you feel that all of this is sort of pulling you in the next stages of your journey personally and helping others, I feel that there's something there that we need to touch on. So, may we touch on that, please?
Yeah. Thank you for that question. That's really beautiful and really aligns to a lot of what I've been feeling into lately for myself. And one thing that feels really scary but excited to claim is my desire and passion to really step into more music as a way of healing myself and using that as a way to bring healing and change to others. I just really restarted claiming my voice these last couple of years and been taking guitar lessons and song lessons and like all these things. And I'm a writer, I'm writing my third book right now, and it's just become very clear to me that a huge part of my message and mission is to bring forth the medicine that I have within me and the wisdom that I have within me through song, through music, through poetry, through the creative arts, not just the hands-on healing work that I do. And I already mix some of those together. I mean, it's already happening. I've been doing that, but it feels like this next stage is like, okay, how can I really claim it, own it, and really bring that forward more than I have been?
Okay, nice. Wonder. Ah, you see, there we are. So that's a reason why I felt the strong feeling to bring up the future, if you like. So that is wonderful. I hope that you do, because as I've already said, Christine Marie, how do I put this? The different ways that the healing manifests, from you, through you, however we define that into the world, and your diversity, is a wonderful, wonderful thing. So I look forward to seeing how that aspect develops. Um, the books, incredible, absolutely. I'm definitely going to check out your written works after today as well. Um, and just so I don't forget about this last topic is again a very simple one, but very necessary, is how people can work with you, because having heard what people have heard now, there may well be some things that they take away and apply in their own lives. And I think for most people that will be what this talk does. But if there is anyone who's feeling the alignment with you, to be honest, in the way that I did, in terms of connecting to do this talk, how can they reach out? How can they work with you? Because I feel that there will be sort of a handful or one or two people who will want to connect with you more personally. So, what
Yeah.
are the best ways to do that, please?
Yeah, so if you go to my website, christinemarieheals.com, or that's my Instagram name or my Substack name, it's all the same, which makes it easy. You can find out some of my offerings that I have right there for private work right now. I'm really focused on people who want to do psilocybin work and then also who want to do plant medicine devotionals, which means essentially we just pair you with a plant spirit, whether that's cacao or rose, blue lotus, and we work with the essence of that plant to bring forth whatever your intention is. And I work both in person. I'm in Portland, Oregon, but I also work virtually. So if you're out of state, we can absolutely still connect and meet and do some really powerful work together. The other offering that I have that I'm really excited about that I haven't launched yet, but will be live on my website within the next week or so, will be based off of a book that I just published called Grieve with Guidance. and it will be a 4-week container that's going to be about tending grief in community. And that will start November 2nd. And that is another way to kind of dip your toes into doing some, beautiful inner exploration work with using the 4 elements and using ritual and community as a way to hold you in whatever loss that you're experiencing. And that's for any loss. It doesn't have to be losing a loved one. It can be, losing a home or a partner or just being in a transition of life. And yeah, you can find that information on my website very soon.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. I mean, it's something that I definitely feel that some people will be drawn to that connection. And for those who've listened this far, then in the nicest way, they obviously have the discipline to actually do something with that. So, that's also why I mention it now. Wow. I mean, we've talked about some great topics. Like I said, Christine Marie, I'm always aware, and I definitely feel with yourself that this is sort of the tip of the iceberg. But at the same time, then there's some great content here that people can use. I mean, whether it's, I always say as well when I do these talks that some people are entirely new to all of this, and that's fine. But for a lot of people, they have kind of the puzzle, I always say, but they often have a piece
Mhm.
that doesn't quite fit. And you've probably heard this analogy before, but also for everyone listening, and they kind of thinking, okay, I'm trying to put this piece in this way, this way. I just don't know how it fits. And when it fits, it will make the most beautiful picture. But at the moment, I just can't, I don't know. And I'm hoping that what we've done today as well is fill in those blank spots for people. So if they're thinking, okay, I'm doing this practice, how does it connect with this? Or I'm doing this aspect, but how does, and I also feel, and that's, as you'll understand, that's not necessarily me saying that. I mean, I really feel that there'll be sort of blank spots um, filled in for people. So it's been a wonderful talk. I have to go for this service, I'm sorry to say, but it has been an absolute joy speaking with you, and I hope that you've enjoyed it as well. And all I can say to close out is one more big thank you for this presence. That's a thank you to you and to your team, and
Mm.
also a thank you for the sort of vulnerability and openness because that aspect of hearing from your experiences directly will really, really help people. So I appreciate it very much and I appreciate everything you shared, your time, your presence, and it's as simple as that. Thank you.
Thank you, Liam. Thank you all. Look forward to weaving again soon.
Absolutely. Look forward to it as well. Have a great day. Blessings and take care. Thank you, Christine Marie. Thank you. Bye bye. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the Simply Inspired YouTube channel, and there'll be more videos coming soon.